Ancient Greece, a world of grand ideas and powerful thinkers, where philosophy shaped the very fabric of society. In a time when Plato and Aristotle sought to define human existence, a figure emerged, a man who rejected comfort, challenged the norms, and lived his philosophy not in elegant temples or grand schools, but on the streets, in the raw and unfiltered world around him. This man was Diogenes of Sinope, known by some as the Dog, by others as the craziest philosopher in history. But in his madness, there was a brilliance, a wisdom that would echo through the ages. He challenged the greatest minds, mocked the most powerful rulers, and in his simplicity found a freedom that others could scarcely imagine. Diogenes didn't write books. He didn't seek fame. He lived his truth, and his actions became stories, stories that captured the essence of his philosophy. Today, we'll explore the anecdotes that define him, tales of wit, rebellion, and a relentless pursuit of authenticity. So, let us journey back to the streets of Athens, to the heart of ancient Greece, and meet Diogenes, the philosopher who held up a lantern in broad daylight, searching for something more elusive than gold or power. He searched for honesty, for truth. And along the way, he left us with lessons that still resonate today. 1. The boy throwing stones. Diogenes was a master at exposing hypocrisy and falsehood in human behavior. One day, as he strolled through the crowded streets of Athens, he noticed a young boy, angry, defiant, hurling stones at random passers-by. It was clear to Diogenes that this boy was the product of an unwed mother, likely ostracized by society, and he was lashing out in frustration. Diogenes approached the boy and, with a serious tone, said, "Be careful, boy. You might hit your father." It was a cutting remark, and those who overheard it were left stunned. Diogenes wasn't just making a joke at the boy's expense. He was pointing out the chaotic and often arbitrary nature of human relations. The boy's anger could very well be misdirected at his unknown parent. The philosopher's remark reflected the unpredictability of life and the consequences of our actions, even when we think we know where we are aiming. 2. Sentenced to exile by Sinope, Diogenes was born in the Greek city of Sinope, a bustling port town. Early in his life, he was involved in a scandal. His father, a banker, was caught debasing the currency, which led to their disgrace. Diogenes, not one to flee from trouble, was exiled from the city. But rather than cower in shame or beg for mercy, Diogenes, with his characteristic audacity, stood tall before the authorities. As they banished him from Sinope, Diogenes, ever the contrarian, retorted, "And I condemn you to remain in this city." This was more than just a witty comeback. To Diogenes, the idea of exile was laughable. He was a philosopher who had rejected attachment to any specific city or material wealth. While others might tremble at the thought of losing their homeland, Diogenes viewed the world as his playground. In his mind, the people of Sinope were the ones truly imprisoned, confined to a life bound by societal expectations and material desires. His exile was, in fact, their condemnation to a life of delusion. 3. Sold as a slave. After his exile, Diogenes roamed from city to city, eventually finding himself in Corinth. It was here that one of the most peculiar events in his life unfolded. Diogenes, despite his philosophical wisdom and wit, was captured by pirates and sold into slavery. To most, this would be the ultimate humiliation, but Diogenes, true to his fearless nature, saw it as an opportunity to demonstrate his superiority over the absurdities of life. At the slave auction, the auctioneer asked him, "What can you do? What are you skilled at?" Without hesitation, Diogenes answered, "I am skilled in ruling men. Sell me to someone who needs a master." The crowd, expecting the usual meek answers from slaves, was taken aback by his audacity. But Diogenes was no ordinary man. He believed that his wisdom elevated him above kings and rulers. Eventually, he was purchased by a wealthy man who, impressed by Diogenes' intellect, made him tutor his children. In this strange twist, Diogenes' status as a slave was turned upside down. While society dictated that he was a possession, in practice, he became the master, teaching the very family that had brought him about philosophy and the rejection of material wealth. Even in chains, Diogenes was free, living life according to his principles. Fourth Plucked chicken incident. Diogenes loved challenging conventional wisdom, and no one was safe from his critiques, not even the famed philosopher Plato. One day, Plato described a human being as a featherless biped. It was his way of simplifying the definition of what it meant to be human. However, to Diogenes, this definition was shallow and reductive. Humans, to him, were far more than animals that walked upright without feathers. So, Diogenes stormed into Plato's academy, holding a chicken he had plucked clean of its feathers. He dropped the naked bird on the floor and declared, "Behold, a man." His mocking gesture not only humiliated Plato, but also highlighted the absurdity of simplifying humanity to such a basic definition. Plato, of course, was forced to refine his definition of a human, adding that humans are featherless bipeds with broad nails. But the lesson here wasn't just about intellectual gamesmanship. For Diogenes, philosophy wasn't about abstract definitions or academic exercises. It was about living truthfully, recognizing the complexities of human existence, and rejecting anything that reduced life to mere categories. 5. Archery Contest. On another occasion, Diogenes attended an archery contest where a young and inexperienced archer was taking part. The young man's attempts were so poor that he could barely hit the target. Each missed shot drew murmurs and laughter from the crowd. Rather than joining in the mockery, Diogenes did something unexpected. He calmly walked over and sat right next to the target. When someone in the audience asked him why he would sit in such a dangerous spot, Diogenes responded with his typical dry humor, "This is the safest place. He's never going to hit the target." His words struck a chord with everyone present. Diogenes wasn't just commenting on the archer's lack of skill. He was also making a broader statement about the unpredictability of life. Sometimes, the places we assume are the most dangerous turn out to be the safest, and in his own life, Diogenes often placed himself in positions that others would have feared, confident in his ability to navigate the chaos with his sharp wit and unshakable philosophy. 6. Diogenes the Dog. Diogenes often referred to himself as the Dog, a label that confused many of his contemporaries. One day, as Diogenes sat in the park, a wealthy and arrogant man approached him. "Are you the famous Diogenes, the cynic philosopher?" the man asked, clearly looking down on the philosopher's ragged appearance. Diogenes, unfazed by the man's arrogance, replied, "Yes, I am Diogenes the Dog." The man, puzzled by this, asked, "Why do you call yourself a dog?" Diogenes, with a wry smile, answered, "I call myself a dog because I bite those who do not know me and flatter those who do." This response was a reflection of Diogenes' view on society. Like a dog, he was loyal to those who understood him and his philosophy. But to those who didn't, he would snap at their ignorance, exposing the hypocrisy and superficiality that plagued the upper class. Through this simple exchange, Diogenes managed to convey a powerful message. The wisdom of the dog was not to be dismissed. He was a philosopher who saw through the facades of wealth and power, and he used his bites of humor and truth to wake people from their delusions. 7. Luxurious party. Diogenes often found himself in the company of the wealthy, though he held no regard for their riches or status. One day he was invited to a lavish party hosted by an aristocrat. The guests, draped in expensive garments, boasted about their wealth and material possessions, looking down on Diogenes for his simple attire and austere lifestyle. The host, eager to mock Diogenes, asked him, "Aren't you ashamed to be so poorly dressed at a party like this?" Without missing a beat, Diogenes responded, "Not at all. I wonder if you feel ashamed to wear so much unnecessary clothing in a world where there are so many who don't have enough to cover themselves." His response left the room in stunned silence. Diogenes had turned their mockery back on them, forcing everyone to reflect on their own excesses and the hollow pursuit of material wealth. For Diogenes, wealth and luxury were chains that bound people to a superficial existence, distracting them from the pursuit of truth and virtue. 8. Searching for an honest man. One of Diogenes' most famous acts was his search for an honest man. Armed with a lantern, Diogenes would walk through the streets of Athens, even in broad daylight, holding the light in front of him as if he were searching for something. When people asked him why he was carrying a lantern during the day, he would reply, "I am searching for an honest man." This peculiar behavior quickly became a metaphor for his disillusionment with society. To Diogenes, honesty and virtue were scarce in a world filled with corruption, greed, and deceit. His search for an honest man wasn't just a critique of Athenian society, but a broader commentary on the human condition. It was a call for introspection, a reminder that in a world where everyone is trying to fit in, the pursuit of honesty and authenticity is rare, yet vital. 9. Power over oneself. Diogenes valued personal freedom above all else, and his encounters with authority figures often revealed his disdain for power structures. One day, while strolling through Athens, Diogenes was confronted by an influential politician. Eager to showcase his authority, the politician boasted, "I have the power to exile anyone I wish from the city." Diogenes, unfazed, replied, "That is nothing. I have the power to exile myself from any city I desire." This response highlighted Diogenes' philosophy of independence. While the politician believed he held power over others, Diogenes showed that true power lies in the ability to control oneself, not in exerting control over others. The politician's authority meant nothing to Diogenes because he was not bound by the need for societal approval or fear of exile. He could leave or stay anywhere he wished, as his happiness and sense of self were not tied to the city walls, wealth, or the opinions of others. This exchange exemplified Diogenes' core belief. Freedom from societal conventions and material desires leads to true autonomy. The politician's power over others was fleeting and superficial, while Diogenes' power over himself was eternal, rooted in his philosophy of living simply and authentically. 10th. Catching flatterers. Diogenes was always keen to expose the hollow flattery that filled Greek society. One day he was seen wandering through the streets of Athens wearing a fisherman's hat and holding a fish in his hand. Curious onlookers approached him, puzzled by his strange behavior, and asked, "Why are you holding a fish, Diogenes?" With his characteristic humor, Diogenes replied, "I'm trying to catch flatterers." He explained that flatterers, much like fish, are drawn to whatever someone holds in their hand, regardless of how absurd it might be. He aimed to poke fun at those who surrounded themselves with sycophants, people who would lavish praise and compliments to gain favor without caring for sincerity. Diogenes despised flattery because it masked the truth. To him, authenticity was paramount, and those who engaged in insincere praise were nothing more than opportunistic parasites. With his simple act of holding a fish, Diogenes exposed how easily people could be manipulated by appearances and false praise, showing that many are more interested in what they can gain from others than in true connection. 11. freedom from material chains. Diogenes' rejection of materialism was legendary, and one of his most poignant encounters on this subject occurred when he stood face to face with a wealthy merchant. The merchant, proudly displaying his vast array of goods and wealth, said to Diogenes, "Look at all these possessions I've acquired. Don't you wish you had wealth like this?" Diogenes, with a knowing smile, replied, "No, thank you. I prefer to be free from the chains that these possessions bring." The merchant, confused, asked, "Chains? What do you mean by that?" Diogenes explained, "Your wealth may seem impressive, but it enslaves you. You spend your life in pursuit of more riches, always wanting more and never satisfied. These possessions you boast about are the very chains that tie you down, keeping you from living a free and fulfilled life." For Diogenes, freedom wasn't about accumulating wealth or power. It was about liberation from the constant desire for more. He believed that the relentless pursuit of material goods distracted people from the true purpose of life, seeking wisdom, truth, and virtue. The merchant, taken aback by Diogenes' words, was left to reflect on the emptiness of his wealth and the chains that bound him to a life of endless ambition. 12. Savoring Hunger. Diogenes often found himself invited to the homes of the wealthy, not because he enjoyed their company, but because they were fascinated by his unconventional lifestyle. On one such occasion, he attended a lavish dinner at the home of a wealthy host. The table was filled with sumptuous delicacies, fine wines, and expensive dishes, but Diogenes sat quietly, not touching any of the food. Intrigued, the host asked, "Why aren't you eating, Diogenes? Don't you like the food?" Diogenes, with a calm expression, replied, "I don't like to waste food. I value hunger more than indulgence." The host, surprised, urged him to try some of the finest dishes, but Diogenes, never one to lose his sense of humor, responded, "No, thank you. I'd rather savor the aroma of these delicacies than burden myself with digestion." With this clever response, Diogenes made a pointed statement about his rejection of excess. He valued the simplicity of life, where even hunger could be appreciated as part of the human experience. To him, the constant pursuit of indulgence led only to more cravings, while a simple, modest life brought contentment. His refusal to partake in the lavish meal was a reminder that true satisfaction comes not from overindulgence, but from living with moderation and purpose. 13. True happiness. Diogenes' philosophy often clashed with the ideas of other philosophers of his time, particularly those who believed that wealth and status were indicators of a good life. One day, a rival philosopher tried to insult Diogenes, saying, "They call you a great sage, but you're nothing more than a beggar living in poverty." Diogenes, never one to be rattled, responded with a smile, "Yes, it's true that I am a beggar, but unlike you, I know how to be happy with so little." The rival, irritated by Diogenes' calm demeanor, continued, "If you were more ambitious and sought wealth, you could live a much better life." Diogenes, unbothered, pointed to his heart and replied, "I don't need wealth to live a fulfilling life. Everything I need is right here." For Diogenes, happiness was not found in material possessions or social status. It was found in living according to one's values, in being true to oneself, and in rejecting the distractions of wealth and ambition. He believed that true happiness came from within, from cultivating wisdom, practicing self-discipline, and embracing simplicity. His life was a testament to this philosophy, and in his interactions with others, he constantly reminded them that the pursuit of external wealth often comes at the expense of internal peace. 14. The Lantern and the Honest Man. Perhaps the most iconic image of Diogenes is that of him wandering the streets of Athens in broad daylight, holding a lit lantern. People were naturally curious about his strange behavior, and they would stop him to ask, "Why are you carrying a lantern during the day? Have you lost something?" Diogenes, with a sly smile, would respond, "I am searching for an honest man." His answer, though simple, carried deep meaning. Diogenes wasn't just searching for a person who told the truth. He was searching for someone who lived authentically and who wasn't swayed by social pressures, greed, or vanity. In his eyes, such people were rare, if they existed at all. The lantern became a symbol of his disillusionment with society. To Diogenes, most people were more interested in appearances than in truth. They wore masks, hiding their true selves behind layers of pretense. Diogenes, through his search, was calling attention to this widespread lack of virtue and honesty. His lantern, carried in broad daylight, symbolized the difficulty of finding even a glimmer of truth in a world consumed by deception. Through these anecdotes, we see the essence of Diogenes' philosophy. He rejected material wealth, social status, and conventional wisdom, choosing instead to live a life of radical simplicity and authenticity. His sharp wit and uncompromising views made him both loved and reviled, but his influence endures, reminding us of the value of honesty, freedom, and self-reliance. Diogenes' life was not one of comfort, but it was one of immense freedom, freedom from the chains of materialism, societal expectations, and the pursuit of false happiness. He lived in a way that forced others to confront their values, challenging them to question whether they were truly living following what mattered most. As we reflect on his life, his lessons remain as relevant today as they were in ancient Greece. To live simply, to speak truthfully, and to seek contentment not in external possessions, but within ourselves. And with that, we've explored some of the most iconic anecdotes of Diogenes, the craziest philosopher in history. His legacy of boldness, wit, and wisdom invites us to look beyond the surface and embrace the deeper, more meaningful aspects of life. If you're intrigued and want to delve further into the world of this radical thinker, stay tuned and keep exploring the wisdom of the ancients.